All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is our June Code Pudding. My name is Tiffany Hall. I'm an alumni of TripleTen Software Engineering Program. I'm currently a full stack engineer at Scholastic Inc., which is the world's largest publisher of children's books and a powerhouse in the digital education space as well. Tonight, I am very excited that I get to be the host of our very favorite thing to do, which is code jams and code puddings. Tonight, we have a code pudding. I'm so glad to see so many of our contestants could join us, as well as all of you that are viewing. Feel free to put anything in the YouTube chat, and I will try to respond as best as I can. Tonight, we are showcasing our code pudding with our fantastic students in the Business Intelligence Analytics department. So in that program, these are going to be students from all over the US. Now, many of you might be thinking, I know what a code jam is, but what's a code pudding and what's the difference? So a code jam is when all of our students get together for a friendly competition in a very short time frame, and then they jam out a bunch of work, right? They put out the code, they put out programs, all of the things. This is a little different. It's much more focused, much more narrowed in on one type of prompt and one type of program, being the Business Intelligence Analytics program. And it comes with my favorite pun, which is the contestants in this one are putting in the work with the data. Okay, so that's going to be our code pudding for tonight. So we're going to have two parts. The code pudding is going to be the work with the data, obviously, and our presentation. Our contestants were divided into, our participants rather, were divided into teams, and we're challenged to collaboratively create visual essays using the data sets that we provided. And we provided a bunch of different ones. Our teams only had 4 days to make their project. So very short time frame. Today is the presentation part where they're going to review all of their work around these visual essays and the data that they have been using. And then afterwards, we're going to have our judges. They're going to review the code, review the data sets, review all of the presentation, and then they will come to a conclusion on who wins the code pudding on July 10. The results are going to be on our Instagram and on our Discord for students who are already in the program. Students who are in the program are able to vote for their favorite project through the Discord channel. If you're not a student just yet, you can vote on our YouTube chat. Feel free to voice which one is your favorite. Audience votes definitely pulls this way. If anyone has any questions, feel free to raise your hand, or like I said, put them in the chat if you're a viewer at home. Our first presentation is going to be tonight from Stress-Free Lifestyle. And the participants in that team are Jillian Kingsley, Eric Dostal, and Andrew Self, who will be presenting from the Stress-Free Lifestyle.
We're actually all three here to present.
All right, which one? Which one's going to take over the main chunk of it?
So Jillian's gonna be our screen sharing everything up. I'm gonna get us started off as soon as we're ready.
Fantastic. Take it away.
So our presentation basically was kind of around stress management, and our audience who wanted it to be people similar to ourselves, kind of looking for a different change in career, just maybe see some effects of stress and sleep quality and things like that that you may not think about when looking for a new career. So yeah, kind of focus on stress levels, kind of how health and occupation and things can all affect your sleep. So our team was Jillian, Erica, and myself. Jillian was kind of our coordinator, getting all the visualizations and everything finalized for us. Erica did all of our follow-ups, kind of helped with the recommendations and getting all that together. And I was the one that put together all of our dashboards and then kind of finalized everything, got it submitted over. So initially, we kind of started out with we each did our own analysis of the same data. We kind of went different routes. I know Jillian kind of focused on the health side of things. Erica focused more so on kind of the participants and who all was involved in the data. And then I focused more so kind of on sleep quality and what really affects that the most. And so we came together and kind of figured out what the goals we were looking for were. Wanted to start off just see who was in the data set. So kind of the breakdown of occupation, gender, age, everything like that. What factors affect sleep quality? There's some things that affected it that would be pretty obvious, some things that you would think would and didn't. What affects different stress levels, and then if there's actually any occupations that had any noticeable trends in better or worse kind of stress levels or sleep quality. And then I've also kind of got just to the right showing a little bit of info on kind of all the different points of the data that we have in the graphs you'll see. So starting with our participants, there's 374 people total that were in this data set that were surveyed. Male to female was pretty even, almost right there in the middle. After that, the ages, pretty much nobody in their 20s really contributed. Only about 5%. Almost everybody was between their 30s and 60s. That made up 95% of everybody in the data set. And then our top three occupations were nurse, doctor, and engineer. Those three occupations alone made up 55% of all the participants. So definitely a little skewed towards that, but just kind of a general breakdown of everybody that was in the data set we used.
Okay. And as far as the relationship between stress level and sleep and duration, excuse me, sleep duration and sleep quality, some of our findings included that perhaps not surprisingly, both quality of sleep and duration of sleep was highest when stress level was lowest. So as you can see from our chart here, both duration and quality of sleep tended to go down with an increase in stress levels. But as you can see from our kind of turquoise teal line here representing quality of sleep, quality tended to lag behind a little further than duration of sleep when we're more stressed. So definitely we would struggle more with the quality of our sleep the more stress we're experiencing, although they both tended to go down with stress. As far as the relationship between physical activity level and sleep quality, as might be expected as well, and based on common knowledge, stress levels tended to decrease gradually with more an increase in activity levels. The exception was, and we found this to be kind of interesting, the exception was at the extremes of this graph. You can see there's sharp spikes both at the very beginning and at the very end. And our hypothesis for this was that obviously, if you're not very active to begin with and your job asks you to become suddenly very or more active than usual, that would logically cause an increase in your stress level. But the same can also be true if you're also already pretty active and your job requires you to become even more so, more active because there's limits, right, to what we can do. So that's something to keep in mind. And from we can see in this other chart here, participants that reported having sleep disorders tended to show higher than average stress levels. Actually, it was about 8 points higher for insomnia, and I believe for sleep apnea, yeah, it was about 6 or 7 points higher. So it was quite a, or excuse me, six, yeah, 6 or 5 or 6 points. And finally, as far as a breakdown with occupation and how that related to sleep stress and gender in our particular data set, we noticed that there were a couple different things, but we noticed that the breakdowns of genders in the careers were slightly different. Nurses tended to be more female and doctors tend to be more male. So that's something to keep in mind for your occupations. But as far as stress, again, we found that engineers tended to have the lower stress levels, where salespeople and scientists tended to have higher stress levels. And the same was, and there was an inverse relationship as far as sleep duration and quality. So lower stress levels were correlated with more sleep duration and greater quality of sleep in engineers. And higher stress levels were correlated with obviously lower quality of sleep and lower duration, like within salespeople.
All right, our conclusions and recommendations. So our conclusions were that getting enough sleep is very important to sleep quality, and it is important to stay active within reason to better manage your stress levels. Some occupations seemed correlated with higher stress levels, as well as many of the effects of stress, like decreased sleep duration and quality, and the presence of sleep disorders. So, our recommendations would be know your career and the risk factors associated with it. Is it a high stress career? Is it prone to short nights? And practice mitigating those factors by exercising good sleep hygiene to get long enough sleep and high quality sleep, as well as getting enough physical activity incorporated into your day, especially if you are going into a high stress or highly sedentary career. Thank you.
That was fantastic. Thank you very much. All right, I have a couple of questions. So feel free to any one of you three to jump in. I just wanted to know that, like, if this was your first time working remotely with, within kind of a team structure since you've been in the program.
I'll say for me, yes, it was. I know we did vary on time zones, nothing too crazy. Like Erica's a couple hours behind me and Jillian's an hour ahead of me. So some nights, kind of like dinner time for one of us is almost bedtime for another.
Mm.
So it was a little harder trying to get it all worked out around the work schedule and everything, but we managed it pretty well. I think we did pretty well managing the schedules and getting together. We met pretty much every night since we got put into teams, so we were able to make time for it every night.
Oh, that's great. And when you were meeting, were you able to meet through video or just doing like kind of chat async kind of things?
Not video, but we were doing like voice calls. So we actually
Cool.
did it in Discord and just did it with the voice call. Easier than trying to text back and forth.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. That's really great. And then in terms of how you said you guys were really happy with the result, but like what was something maybe Jillian that you really enjoyed about this project particularly? I know whenever I was in the software engineering program and we would do code jams, there's always like one little nuance that I would get really nerdy excited about. And so I was just curious if you had something like that too.
I really loved, um, well, since we each worked on our own visualizations, we each created a separate Tableau workbook. And so my task was to consolidate all of the visualizations that we wanted to keep in our presentation into one workbook. So it was super fun to recreate Erica and Drew's visualizations and see how they worked with Tableau and used the different features and
Mm.
different filters and just things like that. So, how they calculated things in Tableau and just sliced all of the data up uh, was really, really fun.
Yeah, it's always neat to see how everyone comes at it from a different angle, right?
Hmm.
Well, thank you guys very much. This was the Stress Free Lifestyle team, and that is Jillian Kingsley, Erica Stell, and then Andrew Self. And so now we are going to go to the Sweet Syntax Squad. I like the alliteration already. That is Mia Wirth, Rachel Knight, and Kevin Bertrand. Who will be taking the lead for the Sweet Syntax Squad?
Hi, I'm gonna start off for our
Sounds
team.
great. Take it away.
Hello, I'm Rachel, and the other people were Kevin and Mia. We are the Sweet Syntax Squad. So we also picked the sleep and the lifestyle data set. We immediately kind of all just found it really interesting to focus on occupation. So that was kind of our primary goal, was just to kind of see like different variables and how they, matched up with occupation. So we kind of did different variables for each person. So I mostly kind of looked at like stress levels and sleep duration per occupation. Kevin kind of more focused on BMI per occupation. And then Mia was more of sleep quality. So we ended up just collabing those all together to make our whole presentation. So mine were the stress levels. So the first thing I kind of just showed was like stress level per occupation. So the bigger, most dark, which is not far off, but sales rep was the occupation that had the highest average stress levels. And then I went ahead and did the stress level per gender. So, like on average, males are shown to have a higher average stress level than females. And then I kind of combined them. And so I just show the stress level and the gender. And I mixed them together to show them per occupation. So you can kind of see like the light purple is female and the dark purple is male. And so that was really interesting to just kind of see the stress levels per gender, per occupation. So that was fun to look at. Like, which one is it? I know doctor had a pretty mid split, I think, but some of them, they weren't very far off. So as far as gender split was. Sleep duration I also looked at, and then it showed that females get slightly longer sleep duration than males. And then sleep duration per occupation. Engineers get the longest on average sleep duration. And then you can see it just kind of goes down per occupation on the duration of sleep. And then I combined both of those. So the sleep levels and the sleep duration per occupation, it just kind of they go hand in hand. Like it's pretty consistent that with each occupation that the longer the sleep duration is, the lower the stress level is for that occupation. And so it was pretty evident with engineers. It added up to their stress level being really low when it came down to them getting the longest duration of sleep. And then I'm going to pass it off to Kevin, who's going to talk about his BMI.
So my main focus was actually sleep disorders per occupations and the factors that would kind of go into that. So to start, I looked at right away occupations and the sleep disorders. And the first thing I noticed was doctors, engineers, and lawyers all had none. Nurses were very high in sleep apnea. So I kind of wanted to dive deeper into that and see kind of what the factors were that would kind of cause that. So the first thing I looked at kind of to get more information was I split up the occupations per gender and noticed right away that the nursing field was heavily female and the doctor was heavily male, as well as lawyer. Engineer was about 50-50 split. So next thing I looked at was age and see if maybe that had a little bit of reasoning to it. And right away I noticed the doctors were on the lower end of the spectrum, the younger age of the spectrum, and that the nurses were on the higher. So knowing that, I wanted to kind of look more into that and see what other factors would cause the nurses to have a higher sleep apnea and the doctors to have a higher and no sleep disorder, considering that they're kind of similar in field. So the next thing I looked at was BMI and noticed right away the nurses had a higher BMI compared to everyone else, which I'm assuming would lead to the sleep apnea, while looking at the doctors, engineers, and lawyers all were in a healthy range of BMI and all had shown no signs of any sleep disorder. And then kind of wrap it all up, I kind of combined stress and BMI to see if there was more to it. And noticing that more times than not, high stress would lead to a higher BMI. It seems like the doctors were kind of an anomaly where they're high stress, but they didn't show many sleep disorders. But as you can see, nurses showed high stress, which led to either insomnia or sleep apnea, and also had a higher BMI when it came to it. Mostly all the other occupations, that if you had high stress, more than likely we were going to have a sleep disorder. Like I said, the doctors were kind of an anomaly.
So I wanted to take a look into sleep quality for occupation. I mean, that's about like what we knew about before, and sleep quality was what I was like, I want to study that. So first thing I wanted to take a look at was just what is the average sleep quality for occupation? And as we're going through the data, that pattern is still reappearing with engineering or engineers having the highest sleep quality, and then salespeople having the lowest sleep quality, which is nurses being in the middle is actually kind of surprising based on the rest of the data. But if you look at it a little bit here, engineers, lawyers, and accountants tend to be a lot less people focused. I know that lawyers, they obviously, they wouldn't have a business without people, but they're a lot of times dealing with themselves. And then the rest of them are dealing with people on a very, very, very regular basis in high stress situations. So my arrow didn't work, sorry. Looking a little deeper, I was able to also look at sleep duration versus sleep quality. And just like was mentioned before, as expected, sleep duration and sleep quality go hand in hand, as longer sleep generally means that you're going to have a higher quality sleep. And right off the bat, we see that engineers, they have the highest average for both. And then salespeople have the lowest average for both. So it was pretty interesting to see that. I wanted to look a little deeper though. I wanted to look at physical activity levels and sleep quality per person, and I did not find any pattern whatsoever. Once I broke it down just individually, as the sleep quality became less, there was no correlation with that physical activity, which I found very strange, because that's what I've always learned. More active, better sleep, but the data is not there. And then I went in and I wanted to divide it into each of the sleep disorders that we had in the data set. So average sleep quality overall, as expected, was highest for people that didn't have anything. And then it was the lowest for people with sleep or insomnia, which makes sense in my mind, because with sleep apnea, you are asleep generally longer too. Insomnia pretty much keeps you from sleeping. So it made sense to me. And still, right off the bat, we see engineers tend to have one of, if not the highest sleep quality, and salespeople tend to have one of, if not the lowest sleep quality. So all of our conclusions together, we have males have a higher average stress level, engineers have the lowest overall, or we'll say highest overall health status, whereas salespeople tend to have the lowest overall health status based on stress levels, based on BMI, sleep quality, sleep duration. And it seems to be that the more people focused and high stress the job is, the higher the stress and the lower the health overall, whereas more individually based, if you will, or more like team based, but not dealing with people on a regular basis, they tend to have lower stress and higher health indicators. but it's important to always have stress management techniques at hand, all moments during the day, to exercise, and keeping in mind that like sleep is just as important as everything else when it comes to our health. And that is our presentation. Oh, my apologies. It was really easy collaborating with everyone. We're in 3 different time zones as well. I'm in Pennsylvania. Kevin is over in Colorado, and Rachel in Texas. So 3 different time zones, 3 different schedules. We're all very different in that regard, but it was very easy to communicate. We were able to meet on video pretty often. We all were coming up with ideas. We were all able to really dive in and kind of nerd out with each other, and it was a good time. So thank you for your time.
Right on. Thank you so much. So, Kevin, I have a question for you. You showed kind of your thinking through, like, oh, I noticed this, and it led me down this rabbit hole. But in that, how, like, what part of the learning in the program from TripleTen helps you know what visualization is right for what data? Does that make sense? So like Rachel used this really cool bubble one, and I really love it when the people use all the bubble ones. But so then it makes me wonder, how come you didn't use any bubbles?
No, it's funny you say that. So I did the graphs I had with the different visualizations weren't the ones we chose to use. So
Oh,
I had some variations. It's just unfortunate where you kind of, we were kind of joking about it where you're only allowed to use so much depending on what kind of data you put into it. So it's like, oh, we were joking like, oh man, I'm getting stuck with bar graphs, right? I keep getting this and all that. So I did make a point to try to have different visualizations, and then it ends up being the ones that we use that kind of tied together with our entire project. I ended up getting more bar graphs and things like that.
so is it that when you guys put the data into Tableau, that it then generates like, here is the best suggested bar graph, or here's the best suggested line graph, scatter plot, like those different types. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think it goes into maybe we could have looked at it, adding more data, or putting it in different ways, or filtering it differently to maybe get us a different visualization. But yeah, it's one of those things where you kind of plug in, it's like, this is your options, and you're like, okay, so what can I add to change? And am I adding things just to add things, or is it going to still give me show me the answers I'm looking for, questions I'm trying to get answered? So
Very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, I just am wondering how everyone chooses those different things. Yeah, fascinating,
I
especially with the
can
color
add to that.
visualization. Please
I
do.
can add with that. I was gonna say, like Kevin was saying, you're kind of limited to what types, but when you do put certain data in, it gives you like recommended. Like if you're putting something in with time, it'll recommend like a line graph, something with like a trend line. But I think for all of us, we just really tried to make graphs or charts that are like very easily readable. And maybe if somebody that has no clue about BIA or this data set at all, we would want them to be able to look at it and understand it.
Yeah, it's definitely a push-pull, I imagine, between having lots of fun things like the bubbles, right? Where you're like, ooh, that's a fun visualization, versus like, yeah, but it's not telling me anything.
Yeah, sometimes you put stuff in it with an idea of how you want it to look, but it doesn't actually end up giving the story how you need it to. So it's a back and forth.
Sure. Well, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate all of the conclusions you came to. And that was the Sweet Syntax Squad. Nailed it. With Mia Wirtz, Rachel Knight, and Kevin Bertrand. And so next we have the Storytelling Sirens, and they have pre-recorded theirs. So I am going to go ahead and do a little sherry. Do, do, do. Make sure I share the sound. Fantastic. Okay, let's get her queued up. Here we are.
Everyone, our team is Storytelling Silence. Our member is Senya, Amy, and me, Natsumi. Our goal for analysis is to find out the hidden issue or challenges that renewable energy companies facing from operational, financial, and socioeconomic perspective. And based on the analysis findings, we propose action plans. Operational analysis was conducted by Senia, financial analysis is by me, and socioeconomic analysis was done by Amy. So let's dive into operational analysis by Senia.
So let's explore the operational excellence and technological proficiency of various renewable energy types. This dashboard displayed such characteristics as installed capacity, storage efficiency, energy consumption, production, and net energy. Reviewing these metrics, we can see that the values across different types of energy are relatively close. That means they are performing at similar levels, showing no drastic difference in their efficiency or output. Each renewable energy has a unique performance trait. This variability means there is no one-size-fits-all solution in the sector. Instead, its technology effectiveness depends on specific geographical, technological, and economical contexts. Hydroelectric, solar, and biomass energy demonstrate gaps between their installed capacity and actual production efficiency, illustrating the need for technological upgrades and better integration strategies. Wave and tidal energy, while promising in terms of production capacity ratios, struggle with overall output and technological maturity. These sectors present significant growth opportunities, but require focused research and development to realize their full potential. Wind and solar have higher energy output, but also high consumption levels. There is a critical need for optimization to reduce waste and enhance energy gain.
Awesome, thank you, Senior. Here's my analysis for financial flows and environment returns. The first is that who are investing into what type of energies. The chart on the top tells investment and incentives divided by funding sources, and we could see public-private partners are funding the most for reusable energy. The below chart tells what they were investing to. The chart indicates wind, solar, hydroelectric are rather popular type of reusable energy. And then let's look into how the findings give impact to environment. It might be obvious, but the trim up on the top tells the bigger findings are contributing to majority of air pollution. The bar chart below is a sum of overall emission reduction divided by investment numbers. Contribution from the bigger investment are of course bigger than small ones, but cost efficient wise, we could find that smaller investment is cheaper to reduce emissions. As the investors are spending a lot of fundings for the energies, they receive incentives, which the left graph shows. Bigger investment gets bigger incentives, but from investors' perspective, ROI is a very important element. The right graph indicates even though they are spending a lot of money, however, ROI for the bigger fundings are significantly bad. So from financial perspective, we could say bigger fundings directly contribute to air pollution and emission reduction, but ROI is quite bad because ROI for smaller investment is much better than big ones, and we suggest to seek more smaller investment accounts, which eventually leads to bigger impact on environmental impacts. Amy?
Thank you, Natsumi. Here's my analysis of the impact of various factors on job creation. And taking a look at the socioeconomic impact of renewable energy, we can observe that there are two main factors, financial and environmental, that are influencing the bulk of the amount of jobs created. Wind energy, having received a higher amount of initial investment, is also the lead of job creation. Most of its jobs are in the minimal integration grid level as well. All renewable energy sources are funded by private, public, private, and government sectors, and those funds have created a total of 37.5 billion jobs and an average of 2,500 jobs with every sector. Wind has the highest amount of jobs created with a total of 5.5 million jobs. The private sector provides the most financial resources to fund jobs across energy types. Minimal integration leads job creation in the wind sector with 1.4 million jobs. And if we consider environmental factors into job creation, solar power has the highest index of air pollution reduction, but only contributes to 5.4 million jobs. Now, impact of environmental benefits on investments and incentives. Environmental benefits of these renewable energies have minimal impact on the investments and incentives they receive. Wind energy still receives a higher amount of incentives and investments overall, while still falling short on being the most environmentally beneficial leader. Minimal integration grid level receives the most incentives as well, considering that both solar and wind are usually run in the grid level. On average, solar power has the highest air pollution reduction. Solar power also has the highest GHG emissions reduction. Minimal integration grid level receives the highest incentives with 38.1 billion, and wind has the highest percentage of minimal integration utilization and has received about 6 billion on incentives in that grid level. Now, for summary and recommendations, upgrades are needed for a hydroelectric, solar, and biomass to boost efficiency and integration. Emerging technologies require more R&D to increase output and maturity. While large investments benefit environmental goals, smaller, high ROI investments maximize impact, promoting broader deployment of renewable projects for sustainability. To boost job creation, prioritize private sector funding in wind and optimize integration strategies, balancing environmental and employment goals. To maximize impact, increase solar investment and enhance incentives for integration in both wind and solar.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening.
All right. Ooh, let's see if I can get my face back on here. Oh, there I am. Okay, good. Well, thank you guys so much. That is the Storytelling Sirens. And I forgot to introduce them, but it is Ksenia Gormash, Amy Maldonado, and Natsumi Murata. And Natsumi is actually on the call, so I wondered if I might ask you a question.
Sure.
My first question really is just around the idea of the code putting, right? So like one of the things that I think people who are interested in participating is they're worried because it's right in the middle of your coursework. And so was it challenging at all for you to kind of transition from the coursework to just focusing on this project? Or did you feel like it really helped you understand how all of the pieces of the day-to-day program fit together?
So three of us, all of us, graduated the coursework, luckily. So it was more like a reflection of what we did in the coursework.
Yeah, like a capstone project.
Yeah, kind of. But at the same time, because the time is very limited, I think all of us experienced, but it was very tight scheduling, and everybody needs to sacrifice weekends to work on this project. So commitment-wise, I say much harder than coursework because the deadline is much shorter, but
Right.
it would be a very good opportunity to output what you learn in the coursework. And at least that's how I felt.
Fantastic. I really appreciate that. It looked like you guys were able to come up with many visualizations, and we were just talking to the last team about how you input the data and you kind of get these recommendations. It looked like you guys had more data than you could say grace over. How did you kind of discern which parts were important for the whole story?
So Senya ideally initially took initiative to create a very detailed decomposition. So we kind of add more contents on what she created as a default. And it ended up like, oh, how about this? How about we look into this data? And we end up having tons of data. But at the end, what we can do is limited within 7 minutes. So we summarized what the main point from the analysis at the end.
For sure. Yeah. That 7 minute, there's nothing about any of these participations are anything unless we highlight the fact that you only had 4 days and you only have 7 minutes. So
Right.
everything is very, very tight for sure. Well, thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate it. Again, that is the Storytelling Sirens with Ksenia Gormash, Amy Maldonado, and Natsumi Murata.
Thank
And
you.
our last presentation for the evening is going to be Data Bus, and they also pre-recorded theirs, and that is Jesus Acevedo, Priyanka Roy, and Anto Kim. So here we go again. I will try to share screen. Bloop. All right. Take it away, Data Bus.
Hello, everyone. Before we start, I wanted to ask you all, have you ever had a bad night of sleep? How about consecutive bad nights of sleep? Maybe even sleep apnea or insomnia. Do we ever wonder if there are factors that affect our sleep? My name is Jesus Acevedo. Our team name is Databus, and today we will be talking about sleep health. Our team consists of 2 current BIA students, myself and Anto, and 1 alumni, Priyanka. You can see here that our roles were in this project. Our agenda for the day will be introduction, process, insights, and summary. For an introduction, let me tell you a little bit about sleep disorders, including insomnia and sleep apnea, are significant public health issues linked to various physical and mental health problems, exacerbated by stress, sedentary behavior, and poor sleep hygiene. According to the American Sleep Association, 50 to 70 million US adults suffer from a sleep disorder. Insomnia affects about 30% of adults with short-term issues and 10% with chronic insomnia. Sleep apnea impacts an estimated 25 million adults. Today, we will focus on factors affecting sleep disorders, potential improvements to overcome sleep disorders, impact sleep disorders have on different occupations. The processing portion of our project consisted of 3 stages: understanding the data we were working with, pre-processing it, making sure we removed duplicates or took care of missing values, and lastly but not least, analyze the data and derive insights. To understand our data better, let me tell you that the mean age of the population sample in the data set is 42. The mean sleep duration is 7 hours with a maximum of 8. Quality of sleep mean is 7 with a maximum of 9. Activity level mean is 59 with a maximum range at 90. Stress level mean is 5.38 with a maximum of 8. In the pre-processing stage, we regrouped the age data into 4 categories. The 20s, which really only covered 3 years as compared to the 10 for the other age groups. 30s, 40s, and 50s, which again doesn't fully cover 10 years, but almost. We also modified the BMI category values as there were 2 data types that were one in the same. Normal weight was changed to normal. Once we pre-processed our data, we started looking at the proportion of sleep disorder amongst our whole data set. We can see in our pie graph that a little over half of our data set reported not having any sleep disorders, while the other half was about evenly divided into people having sleep apnea and insomnia. That means that a quarter of our data set reported having sleep apnea and a quarter insomnia. We wanted to then look at a sleep disorder in the gender and age category. In the gender category, we can conclude a handful of insights. There were significantly more males who reported not having any sleep disorders than females. Very few males reported suffering from sleep apnea, while more males reported suffering from insomnia. Females made up 85% of those who reported suffering from sleep apnea, and about 46% of those who reported suffering from insomnia. Overall, we can conclude that more females suffer from sleep disorders like insomnia or sleep apnea than males. In the age group category, We excluded those who reported that they did not suffer from any sleep disorder. We can also conclude that those in the 40s age group suffer from sleep disorder that the most majority suffer from insomnia. Coming in second is the 50s age group. Now, unlike the 40s age group, the 50-year-olds tend to suffer more from sleep apnea. We can also conclude that as age groups get younger, the less they suffer from sleep disorders. We also analyze how sleep disorder is related to the average quality of sleep, average stress level, and average sleep duration. And as you may have already concluded, increased sleep duration and quality of sleep is positively correlated to individuals reporting no sleep disorders. And the lower the stress level, the lower the reports for sleep disorders. Conclusion, make sure you get over 7 hours and 20 minutes of sleep a night to decrease your chances of suffering from sleep disorders. From this graph, we can learn that there is a positive correlation between the two variables compared in this graph. Another category we analyzed was blood pressure and BMI. As you can see here, when we look at the non-category of sleep disorder, there's more individuals with either low, high, and normal blood pressure. But in the insomnia and sleep apnea category, you can see that there aren't really many individuals in the lower to the normal BP levels, meaning that obese and overweight individuals often experience high blood pressure as a result of suffering from sleep disorders. In this one, the lighter dots represent less stress levels with more sleep duration. We also compared sleep disorders by occupation, showing nurse as the occupation with the highest rate of sleep disorders, taking up 41% of the pie chart on the left, while the pie chart on the right shows the doctor occupation as the one with the lowest rate of sleep disorders. Now, in this bar chart, we can see that the sales rep is the occupation with the highest stress level and the engineer with the lowest stress level. Again, the sales rep occupation has the lowest physical activity and the highest level on average. We have learned that quality of sleep, stress level, sleep duration, blood pressure, and body weight are the main factors that affect sleep disorders. To overcome this, we can increase physical activity, increase duration and quality of sleep while decreasing stress level. These issues impact occupation and vice versa. We clearly learned that the most stressful occupation is sales rep, while engineers have the least stressful occupation. We have delved into understanding sleep disorders, focused on the factors that create sleep disorders. Our visualizations have provided valuable insights into the sleep disorder factors. This analysis aids in understanding that increasing physical activity, duration, and quality of sleep decrease stress levels. All play a role in decreasing chances of suffering a sleep disorder. We as a team created 2 dashboards, utilizing Tableau as a tool. On behalf of the Databus team, I thank you for your attention.
Okay, let me get my face back. Oh, there I am. Okay, fantastic. All right, we have Jesus on the call with us. Hello, Jesus.
Yes, hello everyone.
So I wanted to ask you a couple questions. First of all, I think it was really interesting how you went a different direction than all the other teams. And so I wanted to ask the question, and then I'll have a bigger question later, but do you start out with like a hypothesis after looking at the data, or do you just start making visualizations and then start seeing what connects and stands out to you?
See, like in our first meeting, we actually posed ourselves that question. And actually, we started playing with the data first before we started like formulating questions, like actual, from the data. So we literally explored the data first, started messing with it, creating visualizations and everything. Actually, Priyanka started working on them like literally as we started having our first meeting, which is funny because she already had a few sheets done and stuff. And yeah, it made it a lot
Overachiever.
easier. I mean, she definitely made it a lot easier, to get ahead of it. So yeah.
It's just fascinating. I think, and this is something that I noticed through all the presentations. So it's not just kind of a comment for your team, but the other 2 teams that also did the sleep is like the first one we noticed that our first team, the stress-free lifestyle, they really focused, you guys all really focused on the kind of stress to physical activity ratio of the different jobs, which was very interesting to see how kind of walked us through that narrative. But then we had the Syntax squad. They were showing us the difference in BMI and how there are certain jobs that have higher rates of obesity, and that could be a contributor towards the sleep apnea, which was something they saw represented higher in a certain job. And then the data bus team looking at a very interesting correlation at the end there of like, yes, sales reps have lots and lots of stress and they have the lowest amount of sleep, but they also have the least physical activity kind of in that triangle. And so it's just really interesting to see that all three teams, you guys all used the same data set and came out with like really wild, different points of view. And so I guess, now that I've said all of that, is my question to anyone really from one of those teams is in the program that you're taking for BIA, do they talk about like, is there a right point of view, a wrong point of view? How do you guys figure out what's the right story to tell? Because I mean,
Well,
I think it's cool. It's all three different, but I don't know, like,
yeah, the main thing that you have to focus on is who your target audience is. And I think we each came up with a slightly different target audience. And
okay.
in the program, the training teaches us to take into account your stakeholders and all of the requirements um, that your client or whomever you're working for at that in that project, whatever they need, um, and to speak directly to their questions.
Cool. So it's like a user profile or a customer profile that you guys all make. That's cool. That's what we do in software engineering. You know, we have like the design team, and then we all get together and talk about who our end user is and, you know, what their day-to-day needs might be. And so it's fascinating to hear that the BIA program as a whole, that whole area of expertise could benefit from those same meetings. Very cool. All right. Well,
Also,
ladies, oh, Mia, do you have something you want to add?
yeah, I was just on top of that, not only like the target audience, and then also it with this particular project, it was definitely you could take multiple different paths to get to as useful of an endpoint, which is cool because it was very much the prompt of like tell a story. It wasn't like we need to figure out why our customers are so stressed. It was like, okay, but there are multiple points in that we could tell. Yeah, with the customer profile being very helpful with that as well. It's like, okay, like you really could choose what you're just interested in the data and then see if that's something that's there's enough data about and then
Yeah, I think that's a great point of view is that like telling a story versus answering questions, right? Because both of those are two wonderful corporate applications just in terms of like our day-to-day businesses, right? We have all of this data and we're trying to figure out maybe what is the data telling us so that you can like the stakeholders, right? You have shareholders, you have project managers, and what does all that data kind of mean? But then at the same time, as engineers, we're like, yeah, uh-huh, and why? And why? And so we want more of those like targeted questions around the like, they did X because of Y. Every time they click this button, this was the output. And so it's fascinating to see that just from the same sets of data, you guys could derive such nuance and meaning. Again, just super impressed, all of you. All right, that is going to be it for us this evening. Again, the teams were Stress-Free Lifestyle, Sweet Syntax Squad, oh, nailed it every time. I'm so proud of myself. Storytelling Sirens, and the Data Bus. All right, I want to go ahead and take a moment and just thank everybody who has helped organize our code pudding for this month. That's Arena, Omar, Natasha, Alyssa, Olivia, Ulia, Arena, Nadia, and my cat Sharkbait. He's also a judge. I want to make sure that all of our students are on the lookout for the polls in the Discord channel. And if you're watching this at home, please feel free to drop us a comment in the chat below, and we will put those in with the other votes. All right, winners are going to be announced July 10 at 10 a.m. Eastern in the Discord channel, and also, of course, on all of our socials. Thank you again to all of you who joined tonight, all of your participation and all of your hard work. I know it is a crazy 4 days, but it's really impressive what you guys have come up with. And thank you again for your courage in coming on here so that everybody in the world can see you. My name is Tiffany Hall. If you need to find me, you can at Tiffany Codes on Instagram. You can find me probably hanging out and figuring out how to get more sleep, better sleep, and more exercise while sleeping. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great evening.